child, there's a sense of surety when you ask adults for advice. You trust them to know what's best because they've always had the right answers. And I expected age to bring me this level of clarity, but I turned 18 last summer and I still don't know how to take my own advice. I've always led from the position that I would never ask someone to do something I wouldn't do, but I kept trying to help people when I wouldn't help myself. I kept trying to think my way out of heartbreak, to talk myself out of the way I've always felt. I spent far too long trying to convince myself I wasn't gay because I knew how complicated it would make things. One of the most difficult things about coming out is realizing that people's reactions will change your relationship with them. I was lucky that most of the reactions I got were positive, but the few that weren't stung. Some people stopped seeing me as whole. They fixated on something that had always been a part of me and made it the only part of me that mattered. I'd always believed that people were inherently good, and that used to be enough to overcome my fear that coming out would change the way people saw me. But it wasn't enough anymore. I should have been able to overcome this doubt, but I couldn't, and for the longest time, I felt like I'd been let down by the adults in my life. Instead of dispelling this fear, they compounded it. How was I supposed to accept this part of myself when the people who knew more than me, who knew better than me, were the ones telling me I should change something I had no control over? I'd always believed that love was selfless, so I didn't understand how people could put exceptions on their love and still claim it was unconditional. I tied my happiness to the heartstrings of everyone that I cared about, and then I realized the world isn't black and white, that love had never been selfless, and I couldn't handle it. There's a poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins that says this feeling is as normal as the changing of seasons. This morning of childhood is the blight man was born for, and I may have been born for this loss. That didn't make it any easier. Or maybe it did. Maybe I was the one who was making it harder. We were all born for this loss, and maybe I was just trying too hard to be different. I was talking myself out of mourning my childhood because I didn't think my feelings fit a typical coming of age story. I didn't have a word for the way it felt when coming out changed everything, so I began to call it guilt. And then someone explained to me the difference between guilt and shame. Shame has this way of eclipsing guilt. It shrouds it in shadows until you can't tell the two apart, but they're not the same thing. As terrible as it feels, there's a reason for guilt. It's supposed to teach you not to make the same mistakes again, but shame is irrational. It disguises itself as guilt to trick you into thinking you deserve it. I spent a long time feeling like I deserved this shame, that it was my fault I wasn't strong enough to overcome it. And then a few weeks ago, one of my favorite teachers told me that it was unfair to expect myself to know how to handle this, that there was nothing I could have done, nothing I should have done differently, that it wasn't my fault, because it was never really about me, and it wasn't my fight, but sometimes I'd get caught in the middle because it's easier to hit me than whoever they're really mad at. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do is forgive myself for spending so long thinking I had to let them win. She also told me that she would love it if her daughter brought someone like me home, and I went home and cried because I couldn't remember the last time I felt like someone other people's parents would be proud of. I'd forgotten that the only thing I ever needed to be was someone I could be proud of. I'm not ashamed anymore, and I'm trying really hard not to be embarrassed. I'm done letting people who don't know me decide the type of person that I am. I'm unlearning everything I've ever been taught about love and expectations. I'm going to mourn this loss until I no longer resent it, until I learn to be grateful for it. It's made me more empathetic than I was before. It's helped me understand how someone could blame themselves for something that clearly wasn't their fault. We were all born for this journey. And while that might not make it any easier, it definitely makes it less lonely. Sometimes we don't need someone to tell us the right answer. We just need them to remind us that we've known it all along. I spent a long time feeling like I wasn't good enough. And I want to thank everyone who reminded me that I was. I got so caught up in trying to understand how I felt that I forgot I was never really in this alone. My beliefs are a combination of everything anyone has ever taught me. People have given me the tools I need to navigate this world of gray, and I need to trust myself to use them. I'm getting better at taking my own advice and learning to forgive myself for all of the times that I couldn't. I still want to believe people are inherently good. And in order to do this, I need to forgive people's ignorance. I need to forgive myself for thinking this was going to be easy, for thinking that compromising my happiness to fit other people's expectations was a solution. Being gay wasn't a choice, and it doesn't define me, but I'm choosing to forgive the people who think that it does. As I let go of what's left of my childhood, I'm letting go of this desire to please everyone except myself. I deserve to be happy too. I'm happiest when I'm fighting for the things I believe in, and I'm thankful that I can finally say one of those things is me.